Hello and welcome to the show. Now, we speak to many companies, but not many that were formed 128 years ago, back in 1893, where at the time the optical manager of T. Cooke and Sons of York, makers of astronomical telescopes, set about eliminating the optical distortion at the outer edges of lenses. The Cooke Triplet was born, and as they say, the rest is history.
Absolutely. And to fill us in on everything since then, well, maybe not everything since then, but certainly the current stuff, we're delighted to welcome Carey Duffy from Cooke Optics. Good to see you, Carey. How are you doing? So let's start. Let's look at the rise in popularity of full frame. That's been pretty astronomical recently.
Yeah. It was weird, the start of full frame. We obviously came out with the S7Is very early on at the start of full frame of the major motion picture lens manufacturers, shall we say. We were out blocks first with the full frames. There were full frames available in rental houses, they're bespoke. Those companies have designed stuff, but so that everybody could get their hands on something. Spherically speaking, we came out with the S7Is early doors, and it was interesting at the start because if you go into a rental house, you can go between multiple manufacturers and say, oh, can I test these lenses? Can I test those lenses? I want this, I want that, I want, maybe I want macros this end, zooms that match, all of that. Yeah. And when full frame came out, you went into a rental house and said, oh, great, I want to shoot full frame. What do you got? And they go, A, B, maybe A, B, C. And I think that caught a lot of cinematographers on the hop because they thought, oh, it's all available. The roadmap's open. We can go full head. And yeah, there's a lot of full frame lenses out there you can use, and there's lots of mounts that take full frame with mirrorless that have opened that up. But that doesn't mean the production-based full-frame roadmap was fully laid out, and it caught a lot of people by surprise. And now it's sort of catching up and growing up as different lenses from different manufacturers are released. There's a lot of vintage that have been rehoused that have come onto the market as well to aid the variety of looks. And we were not renowned and never have necessarily been renowned to stock things on the shelf. As I say, our lens storeroom is like IKEA. It's all flat packed. It's flat boxes waiting for lenses to go in them, because the minute they're made, they're out the door because they're for an order for a customer. So we couldn't support customers in the way that they wanted as they were buying then more than one camera, shall we say. They were finding out they were not having enough glass on the shelf to support the number of bodies they had. But the trend, as I always said, it hasn't stopped. It wasn't going to stop. It just had to mature. And in that maturing, many rental houses, motion picture, high-end TV production rental houses, if you go into them, they have a few sets of Cooke S4s and maybe some few sets of Masters or Ultras. They won't just have one set. And that, those additional sets and the fill-in lenses from the core set to other lenses we put in to fill in to the S7Is now are now catching up, and people are adding another set because that just goes to prove that full frame's here, because they need additional sets to support the other manufacturers' full frame sets, or they got 3 or 4 camera shoots, so they need 2 or 3 sets. And so that's continued. It hasn't stopped. So your question about how is full frame, it's alive, it's healthy, it's busy, it's shooting, and it's another tool in the toolbox.
So, okay, let's move swiftly on from that. And can we talk about anamorphic? And can we assume that maybe somebody watching this doesn't fully understand how it works and what it is? Where did it start? And can you give us a quick overview, please?
Well, anamorphic or scope as an optical system, sort of started back in the First World War with the French designing optics inside tank turrets. A lot of stuff actually from motion picture, or especially film, was developed through Ministry Defense departments globally. And it's pretty simple. You've got a bigger scope or view of the battlefield. You're going to kill them before they kill you. Let's make it pretty simple. Or you can see them, or you can dodge out the way before they can kill you. And that system was designed for that. And then it found its way into the motion picture business when television arrived in the US in the late 40s, because people were staying at home and watching this square box rather than going to the cinema, which then led the big studios of the day to work out a new experience. We can catalogue those experiences from scope to 3D, which then came back again. And in some respects, anamorphic came back again because of the introduction of digital cameras, and digital cameras are a little bit more sterile than film stocks, do we say. And therefore people started experimenting a lot with lenses. Prior to digital, people were experimenting because film was locked in that area. We're experimenting a lot with filters to change their looks. So once digital came in, the beauty of it was the anamorphic system inside a basic film mechanism, an optical system, is that it gives you a stretched image. But if you don't de-squeeze that image, you're looking at a very tall image and a very not very wide image in the viewfinder. And digital just gets rid of that. It just de-squeezes digitally. And that's beautiful. It's wonderful. And you can send it out to all your monitors and everybody can see. It also adds a lot of character. And if you ask Joe Public what they consider to be cinema and show them images, even if you show them a 185 spherical image over a 240 anamorphic image, and you say, which one to you represents cinema? They'll generally go for anamorphic, and they don't know why they're doing it. It's just ingrained. It's like this, the cinema literacy that we've been ingrained to understand. And, you know, when Scope came out with Spartacus and your Ben-Hurs and all of your wide angle stuff, that really at that 50s height of cinema, shall we say, it's ingrained in us. And we just think that's big, that's cinema. And culturally, we've never lost that. But having said that, different cultures view it different ways. At the moment, it's very prevalent in Europe and North America and in China, Asia, but it's not a big sell in India. They're more for, they prefer more spherical wide image than they do an anamorphic. And then to explain it, so we're here looking at me on a television screen, and television screens changed from that 4:3 image and they went to 16:9. And we all went through the change in that with equipment. And then since sensors could de-squeeze more easily once CMOS sensors came in and we're not using CCDs, that made anamorphic glass more adaptable to the digital camera platforms that were coming out. And it came in from there. And I heard a lovely story, and I've seen a great presentation about how the sort of came in on television through a TV series called True Detectives with Woody Harrelson and who it was with him as well. It's sort of a birth of the actor as executive on TV drama, because Woody Harrelson and his main acting, was it Brad Pitt or was it someone else? It's someone of that echelon. I mean, you know, top A-listers doing a 10-part TV series that was an early Netflix. It was shot anamorphically. So you've then got people, and it's a great story. It's a fantastic story, but it looks great. It's a fantastic story. It's got A-listers. It's on television, not at the cinema, and it lasts for 10 parts. It's like, what's not to love? And it drew people in. So there are a lot of cultural convergence in that program.
Yeah, it made the viewer feel a bit, I guess, a little bit with the look and with they're having the cinema experience at home. That's been a big thing, isn't it? With
Yeah,
Netflix.
and
So
television's got bigger, and they've got bigger and bigger, and
yeah,
so
absolutely.
Anamorphics worked with it. And a lovely little anecdote I love to tell is a few years ago, because we brought out our 2x anamorphic with the Super 35mm format. I loaned a rental house the new 65mm macro, because the other issue with anamorphics is historically they've not focused well very close. So we brought a macro to fit the range, and it was for a BT commercial, I believe. And when I phoned him up afterwards and I said, "Oh, how did it go? Did they use the macro and did it work for?" He said, "Yeah, good." And we were just chatting. He said, "One of the funny things is that originally the client or the agency they wanted maybe to squeeze the anamorphic to 16:9 and not have it wider, and in the end they went wider." I said, "Oh, why is that?" And he said, "Oh, they can get the terms and conditions more in the bottom of the frame." so it's great. But that all comes from Sky News and CNN News of rolling news titles, and Bloomberg with the numbers for the digits for the stock exchange. So people had just sort of understood that, we're not throwing away screen estate because it's black and I'm buying a big telly and I'm losing it. It's got space for information. And now people are just taking it as the norm. It is the norm.
Yeah, no, I get that. And so with these, it sounds to me like there are certain techniques that people could learn shooting anamorphic. Are there places? Are there good places to learn this?
Not necessarily. You've got the problem with that. Not the problem, or not the issue. What you're quite right, Matt. What you've got to learn is that anamorphics focus differently, because you have two focal planes. You have a horizontal focal plane and you have a horizontal and you have a vertical. So when you say that the lens is 50mm, the height of the image will be that comparable of a 50mm spherical lens. But the width is determined by the D squeeze. So a 2x will have a field of view of a 25mm and a 1.8, which we designed specifically for full frame. So a 50mm full frame height with a 1.8 D squeeze would give you the field of view of a 24mm with inside the 2:40 aspect ratio.
Right.
And that catches people out. And generally with anamorphic lenses, you get curvature. It's all part of the character. Now, some people like it, some people don't. Some people will shoot a spherical and crop at 2:40, and they're happy with that. Sometimes in major motion pictures, they need to use sphericals because of bowing or pin cushioning and curvature in an image. They need to use a more rectilinear spherical lens to capture certain shots for VFX, but then they crop it and they drop it back into the film. So, people do, if they've got the money, have the budget, that they'll drop things in and out to deal with those issues. But some people just love the character. They're junkies for it.
Yeah.
That's life.
Get it.
That leads nicely on to what you call the Cooke look. I mean, can you put your finger on exactly what that look is?
The Cooke look is partly philosophical, or that the philosophy of the Cooke look is designed into the lenses. And our lens design philosophy is primarily the on axis, as I'm looking at you through the middle. If I can try and get that in the middle of the screen and move around through the middle of the image. That's your sharpest point. That's where I'm looking. I'm a human. I got two eyes. I look forward. I'm not a gecko or a horse looking out the side here. I'm looking down there and I'm looking at a face, because we look at faces a lot of the time, and we concentrate. Now, I have a view out here. I can see my hands. Bring this one on the other hand into view. Where am I going? Left to right, back, whatever. If I on that peripheral view, I can see it, but it's not sharp, and that's organic. And that's natural to me. Now, if you take a lens manufacturer that sort of prides itself in its photographic lines of lenses, so that when you look at a still image that isn't moving, up here is sharp and down there is sharp. Hold on, there and there. Sorry.
We'll find you. Yeah.
Their lenses are designed so across that diagonal, it's sharp. It can be fantastic for a photograph to stand and look at something still. I don't think it's great for moving images, because moving images also have a dimensionality in them, which is part of the on-axis sharpness and fall off, so that dimensionally things fall away from me. Now, if I'm at f16, it's hard to put that dimensionality in. If I'm a working Super 35 T-stop at T28 to 445, so that I can get enough depth in to capture the image, so I'm not just stuck on the end of my nose trying to hold focus and giving the focus pull of grief, you'll have dimensionality, and that's organic. And that means your eyes don't hurt when you're watching something. And it feels natural. At the end of the day, bad lighting is bad lighting, but if it's well lit, it's only going to help. And so that philosophy with well lit images produces very pleasing looks, and people like that, especially when we make motion picture lenses, and motion picture lenses are primarily used on storytelling productions. We're not ENG news. So therefore, you're telling a story, you're trying to convey a feeling, and they work in that way. But everybody sees the world differently, and they're entitled to see it their way and use what they like. But that's how our philosophy comes out in our imagery.
Really interesting, yeah.
And so now so that's arguably the Cooke look. There's also been, and I don't know whether this was all down to the reintroduction of, because I think you reintroduced the bankroll, I don't
Classics,
know, a couple of years ago maybe, as in the new one, the vintage feel. I mean, people were rehousing.
Well, that's the original. That comes from the original Cooke look. Yeah, a vintage and the original Cooke look in that way with the bankroll classics go hand in hand, because the original bankroll, speed bankrolls, which we've now remanufactured and called them the bankroll classics and extended the line, is that on axis on a bankroll classic is rock solid sharp through the middle. I mean, you put it on an MTF chart, you put it on a projector, you put it up against the latest lenses, it's just as sharp. You know, you're getting 200 pair lines, 20K resolution through the middle. But then it goes away. Where the modern lenses have a wider, sharper target area before they fall off. So, and what we did with those lenses is, because, as I mentioned earlier about digital and using lenses to add character, because sensors are so sterile, people started rehousing speed pancros and Baltars and K35s and everything else to give them those looks. It just so happens that the speed pancros were so widely available globally, and we manufactured so many of them since they started in the early 1920s. That there was a lot out there to be rehoused. So people started doing that. The problem with that glass is that over the years, so you could have an 80-year-old lens or a 50-year-old lens or whatever, this is a true story, but I won't name names. There was a production that had 3 units on it and something like 8 bodies. And it had to, so it was a big job, and what they had to do on this job, on series 1 and I think series 2, they changed the lenses when they went to 3 or 4, because historically it was changing. So therefore they wanted to change the look, which absolutely fine. You can't keep a historical thing looking the same all the time. So they set it up. Anyway, they had to put a LUT into in the camera for every lens, because the glass, each 75 was a different color. Each 32 was a different colour. So to match everything on set, they had to put a LUT in for every lens for the monitors, or else it would have just looked awful. Those sorts of issues are what you don't want if you're shooting 3 or 4 cameras with 2 lens sets the same. You want them to match.
Yeah.
That's what all of the manufacturers pride ourselves on, is our lens sets matching. So we re-brought out the bankroll classics. They're designed with the same refractive index. They're designed with the same lens, optical inside the housing. We've just used new glass with those same parameters and put them in modern mechanics and added eye data to them. And so they're built from scratch and look old. And we've got testimony back from DPs that say that. I mean, we say it, or try to say it in our marketing, but when DPs come back and tell us, no, that's what I achieved, it's like, great, that's what we wanted it to do. And vintage is in because there's lots of glass to choose from, I presume. But the one thing I find with sort of vintage and detuning is people go, oh, I love it, I want to do this and I want to do that. And then they go, oh, but I can't do it on the zoom, and oh, I can't do it on this, and oh, I've only got one lens. Actually, they've only got it in this mount, and actually this, and actually that. Now, when you come down to it, you go back to, I need a camera, I need a set of lenses that matches. It's not going to waste time in grading, and color matched, and I can work with, and the focus puller can work with. And you go down there and you go, oh, right, fine, okay, I've got this choice then. Doing a pop promo or something else, fine, experiment. But it's you've got to go to a rental house, and the rental house has got to buy lenses as an asset for a fleet, and it needs to be able to have serviceable products that they can reservice, or their service training for, or all of those other underlying things that when everybody goes, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, I'm going to use it. The rental house is going, really? Okay, yeah, we'll buy it, but can I service it? There are all these new lenses coming out. They're having such trouble with finding where they can send them back, and is there a service technician there? So that's where, the major manufacturers who are trusted win, and that's why people also stick with them, because they're designed to work for the jobs they're designed to work for.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, great to catch up. Hopefully, we'll all be going ahead with kitplusshow.co.uk in Media City. Hopefully, with a bit of luck, we'll have some Cooke lenses on show. Stay up to date by going to the website. It'll be the first face-to-face event of this summer. And of course, thanks to Mediaproxy, who support us here at KitPlus TV. Visit them at mediaproxy.com. Thanks again, Carey. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Thank you. Really actually looking forward to July. Let's hope it's all going to come together. And thank you for this opportunity as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Carey.
Thanks, Carey.